goodness, Bear. Oh, what a night that was. Oh, I never expected to have such a party at the Troll King's. How was your evening? A lot quieter, I imagine. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Oh my goodness, it's so dark in here. Oh, that's why. I forgot to take off my glasses. Oh my goodness. Well, look what the Troll King gave me. It says, to Santa from the Troll King, Merry Christmas. He gave me a nutcracker. How about that? Isn't that something? Well, we'll just put him right here in front of the fireplace. And I did promise you another chapter soon, so, we've got a little bit of time before we have to go to bed. So how about if I read you the next chapter? Would you like that? Okay. All right. So tonight's chapter is Chapter 6, The Fatherly Elf. When Snarky opened his hands, Acorn jumped back in surprise. "What for goodness sake is that?" he cried. "It's just a bit of me treasure," Snarky replied. "Pretty, ain't it?" "Beautiful is more like it. Where did you get it?" Acorn asked. "I found it last summer floating in the river. Almost drowned trying to fish it out. Didn't know it glowed until tonight. That keeps it wrapped up so no one steals it." Snarky was holding it close to his chest as he said this. "I won't take it from you. Did you notice something moving inside it?" Acorn observed. "What you talking about? Ain't nothing moving in there," Snarky cried as he held up the blue ball and looked at it closely. And noticing the movement inside for the first time, he could just see something moving around inside. "How'd that get in there?" Just as elves are made from the earth, there are other magical creatures that are made from things like starlight and stardust. What Snarky didn't know was that he was holding one such creature in his hand. "Snarky, it's growing!" Acorn shouted as he jumped back. The blue ball began to grow and grow. Snarky was holding it at arm's length, hopping from one foot to the other, yelling at the top of his voice, "Me treasure! Me treasure! Make it stop! Make it stop!" While Snarky was dancing around like a wild hooligan, bits of starlight and stardust were falling down from the sky and into the blue ball, which kept getting bigger and bigger. The shape inside seemed to be getting bigger as well. Soon the ball floated up and out of Snarky's hands until it was flying over his head. "It's after me! It's after me!" He kept shouting as he was running around in circles, the blue ball chasing him around with a trail of glowing stardust behind it. Acorn ducked behind a large rock, fearing that he might get knocked back down the riverbank by a panicked troll. The blue ball floated higher and higher and higher as it got bigger. It looked like a giant bubble that was just about to... Suddenly, there in the air, fluttering its wings, floated one of the most beautiful creatures in the world, a fairy. Her face was magical in its beauty. Long flowing hair drifted down her back between two wings that were almost as tall as Acorn. Her wings made him think of a giant butterfly, only you could almost see through them. A pale blue glow surrounded her, making Acorn's jaw drop as he stood staring at her. "Don't let it eat me! Keep it away!" Snarky lay on the ground with his arms over his head. "It's going to get us for sure!" His voice was squeaking now because he'd been screaming so much. "Don't let it bite me!" He was all curled up in a ball, not even looking at what had just happened. Acorn continued to stare at the lovely fairy as she was flitting around his head.
"What you staring at, so big, Minnie?"
The fairy said in a voice that sounded like reed pipes. Now I know this may surprise you to learn, but fairies hatch and usually their parents are close by. But this fairy had been kept wrapped up in tinfoil since last summer in Snarky's treasure pile. Because they are magical creatures, they are fully grown when they hatch, and they can talk too. Normally they are very polite, just like their parents. But this fairy had spent a lot of time growing in the egg with only Snarky nearby. So of course, she thought she was a troll.
Well, Mr. Bug-Eyes, what you staring at?
Acorn was completely caught off guard, first by the fairy's sudden hatching and then by the way she talked. She sounded just like a troll, and she just called him Mr. Bug-Eyes. Here she was not even a few minutes out of the egg, and already Santa should put coal in her stocking. I do not have bug eyes, Acorn replied rather haughtily.
Bug-Eyes, Bug-Eyes, Bug-Eyes!
The fairy shouted as she flew in circles over Acorn's head.
You're a big Bug-Eyes! You're a big Bug-Eyes! You're a big Bug-Eyes! You're a big Bug-Eyes! Bug-Eyes, Bug-Eyes, yeah!
She finished this last round of insults by sticking out a rather long blue tongue. Fairies have long tongues for getting the nectar out of flowers, just like hummingbirds. Stop it! Acorn was shouting back. During all this time, Snarky had been hiding his head, being too afraid to look. Now, with all the shouting from Acorn and the fairy, he thought he might just take a peek to see what was going on. What are you looking at? Snarky asked when he saw this lovely creature insulting Acorn. The fairy turned and noticed Snarky for the first time.
Mommy!
She cried as she zipped over to him. She landed on his head and began smothering with kisses.
Mommy, Mommy, Mommy! Mwah, 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 mwah!
Ah! Get it off me! Get it off me! Snarky was running around in circles again with a big blue fairy stuck to his head, smothering him with kisses.
Mommy, Mommy! Mwah, mwah!
The fairy clung to Snarky's head like a hungry octopus.
Mwah, 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 mwah! Mommy, Mommy, Mommy!
Acorn started laughing. It was a little chuckle at first, then he was giggling, and then soon uncontrolled gales of laughter were bursting forth and he was rolling on the ground. His laughter soon caught the attention of Snarky and the fairy.
Who are you laughing at?
They both cried at once. You too, Acorn said between laughs. You both look so funny there. Big mean old troll scared of a fairy calling him Mommy. Acorn went back into peals of laughter.
You stop laughing at my mommy!
The fairy yelled back. She turned and resumed kissing Snarky. Wait up here! Who you calling Mommy? He asked.
You silly! You're my mommy! Mwah, mwah!
She planted more kisses on his head.
You kept me safe until I hatched. That makes you my mommy.
She said matter-of-factly while landing still more kisses. I ain't no fairy and I ain't your mommy, Snarky said rather forcefully. Snarky, I don't think it's a good idea, Acorn started to say when the fairy started crying in the most piercing tones. Acorn and Snarky both had to cover their ears or lose their hearing. For goodness sake, make us stop! Make us stop! Snarky cried. You're the only one who can do that, Acorn hollered back, trying hard to be heard over the fairy's wailing. When fairies want to, they can really put up quite a fuss. How am I supposed to stop that? She thinks you're her mommy, so act like one, Acorn advised loudly. I don't know how to do that, Snarky hollered back. Do whatever your mother did for you when you were upset. Come on, think of something. I can't take any more of this. Acorn was feeling pretty desperate by this time. The troll's cries earlier were nothing compared to this fairy's outburst. Oh, good idea, Snarky said as he hauled back and whacked the fairy upside the head. She went tumbling through the air and got caught in a nearby bush. Acorn was shocked. Hitting the poor thing was the last thing he ever expected, but trolls have a different way of handling their children than elves or humans. Don't ever think that you should whack someone to make them stop crying. Unless they're a troll, of course. Snarky, what are you doing? You could have hurt her, Acorn shouted. The fairy had indeed stopped crying and was busy trying to untangle her wings from the bush she'd landed in. Snarky immediately felt bad about what he'd just done and went over to help pull her out of the bush.
Mommy, you saved me!
The fairy cried as she finally got out of the bush. Snarky was once again showered with kisses.
Mwah, mwah, mwah!
There, Mommy's gonna look after you. I'll keep you safe from that nasty old elf, Snarky murmured quietly as he patted her wings. What did I do? Acorn cried in shock and surprise. Hush! You don't want to scare her again now, do ya? Snarky said while petting his new child adoringly. Evolva! Acorn didn't know what to think. If he'd lived to be 900, he was sure he'd never see anything this strange again.
Thanks for saving me from that bug-eyed old me.
the fairy said as she snuggled up to Snarky. For sure, me sweetie. What shall I call you? Snarky asked while returning her hug.
Call me Sassy.
Well, that seems fitting enough, Acorn said under his breath.
Hey, you! Watch your mouth, you bug-eyed old newt.
Sassy hollered back in her musical voice. Acorn threw up his hands in disgust. How did he end up the bad guy in all this? I just don't know what to do in all this. I'm lost. I don't know how to get back to Santa's sleigh. My feet are cold, and I'm starting to get hungry. And then to top it all off, I have a sassy fairy and a snarky troll that think I'm the cause of all their problems. He sat down with a loud sigh. I'm about to give up. You need to catch up with Santa's sleigh. I knows who can help you with that, Snarky cried excitedly. And that is the end of Chapter 6. Well, what do you know? Acorn has a friend in that troll who might actually help him get back to Santa's sleigh. Maybe we'll find out how he does that real soon, huh, Bear? All right, so it's time for you to go to bed. And make sure you brush your teeth. And you too. And we'll be back soon with the next chapter, okay? Good night. Oh, Harley, son of David. Oh, he took too many bumps. Oh, my goodness.